So, welcome to everybody. Great that you are interested in our webinar about BigQuery for experiment analysis. So, today we want to talk about the benefits of BigQuery and why you should use it. And my name is Steffen. I'm the CEO of Verify. And today I will, or especially Bas will tell you more about BigQuery. And I'm more the sidekick here. But now I already will pass over the ball to Bas that you can introduce yourself and happy horizon.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Stefan. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Nice to be able to tell you something about the use of BigQuery for experiment analysis. My name is Bas. I'm a CRO specialist and data scientist for a digital marketing agency named Happy Horizon. We operate from the Netherlands. And yeah, we do a lot of stuff. We do digital marketing, we build websites, platforms, and we do branding, content, and PR. So we're in it for everything. And today we're going to tell you something about BigQuery, and especially because Verify has done something with BigQuery. Maybe you can tell a little bit about that, Stefan.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for you guys who are not familiar with our A/B testing platform, Verify was founded to be a true alternative to all the other A/B testing tools out there. Um, in the difference to the other tools out there, we rely on one single source of truth, which means we just rely on data from the web analytics tools which are already in place. For example, like GA4 or BigQuery, Matomo, Piwik, doesn't matter, because very often we figured out that if you have more than just one source, like in your testing tool and in GA4, there will be some questions after a while. And the worst thing what could happen basically is when you have maybe a clear winner in GA4 and a loser in your testing tool or the way around. Then, especially when this happens, you need to think about which is your source of truth. And for us, clearly, it was the web analytics tool, because usually you take trust into those data anyway. And why should you only trust another tool for doing the AP testing results decisions? Yeah, so this is Verify.io. Here you also can see a few of our clients. And yeah, it's made and hosted in Germany. So we are already a player in the market. And yeah, I think now enough from the introduction. We can go on.
Thank you so much. I think you painted a really interesting picture there about the source of trust. We'll get into that later for this webinar, but it's great that you already pointed in that direction. So yeah, that brings us to the topics for today. We're going to talk about experimentation and data collection, that single source of truth that Stefan already was speaking about, then the differences between GA4 and BigQuery, how to connect with BigQuery, and then some tips from our daily practice. So how to not fail, or maybe you want to fail and learn from that, that's totally fine as well. We did. But yeah, why we're doing all of this is obviously to take as little risk as possible and to make better decisions, right? That is the main goal of experimentation, and that means that we need to have data that we can trust. I thought this quote fitted that end goal really well. This is from Matt Skaisbrook. Matt is a CRO specialist from the UK. He used to own an agency. He doesn't anymore, but I saw this quote from him once, and I decided to adopt it because I really love it. So yeah, that brings us to the first topic of today, experimentation and data collection. So yeah, let's look what we have here. How do you start analysis on a experiment that you concluded? Usually, the first thing, oh, sorry, I'm moving a bit too fast here. Usually you look for a source of truth, right? And many A/B testing vendors offer a dashboard. So why should you use another source of truth to analyze your data with? Well, there's obviously conflicting data between tools. I mean, if you look at your dashboarding and your web analytics, it's not very often that they show the same amount of data in both users and conversions and who knows what else. And those tools might not offer the deeper insights that you want to have. So you might want to delve deeper to understand certain behaviors, to understand certain effects. There's also limited control over what your data can do in many tools. So you don't know how it's collected, you don't know how to interpret certain statistics maybe, or how they came to be. So it's really hard to just take it from there. And then there's obviously the goals and event setup. Sometimes it requires a lot of technical expertise. That varies by tool, but yeah, mostly those goals you have already defined in other sources like analytics, for example, or events that are um, sent to BigQuery.
And isn't it a
And
pity
then
if you
yeah,
already set up all of the goals in GA4, for example, and then you have to redo it again in your A/B testing tool, and maybe after a while you're using another one, then you have to migrate all of the goals again and again. Yeah,
and this last point might not be something that um, everybody thinks about, but it's a big issue for me personally. The black box. I don't know how a user is defined in certain tools, and I do understand other sources better, or how certain statistics are calculated. So yeah, that could be an issue if you're a bit more knowledgeable about that and you start raising questions.
yeah, exactly. And also, for example, if you just segment your data in your A/B testing tool, very often you will see immediately the results. For example, if you filter for another date range. So pretty sure here also is some sampling used for sure. But what you said is totally true because it's like a black box. You don't know what's happening there. And in the end, you want to take trust in the data. And I think you only can do so if you have full transparent data and basically access to the raw data.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. But yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? So an easy route is obviously Google Analytics. Many vendors provide the connection to Google Analytics. They send their experimentation events to Google Analytics, which makes it easy, relatively easy, to create reports and just segment the data there and take a look at it. So yeah, you start with collecting the data and send it to Google Analytics. And you can do it like this. This is an example for a verify A/B test. You just add a custom dimension that has been provided by the vendor. You then select the custom dimension and you find the experiment and variant ID that you want to measure. So in this case, this might be the control, and you do the same for the variant. And that results in a setup like this. So you can see total users and you can see total conversions per segment of devices in this example. So yeah, that's pretty easy, right? I mean, it takes a little bit of practice maybe, but I think you'll get there in no time. And there's also, it's good to know that these segments shouldn't overlap because you segment them in bucket one versus bucket two, and you need to have a very unbiased review of what those users did. So it's really good to check that in advance. And then the next step is obviously to calculate what kind of effect that we have. So you plug those values that you found into a significance calculator, and then you get the result. So in this case, it's significant. It's not significant. It's not
It's
significant.
it's not significant, yes.
No, it's not significant. Yeah.
Of course, it's very minor numbers, but it's just a demonstration, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole story about the GA4 approach basically is you could do so, you could do your analysis in GA4 directly. You have basically all options to use segments in a way you like, but it's still hard to do a proper calculation, a perfectly significance analysis, because you always need to have an external calculator in order to do so. It's not very comfortable.
No. And some tools do provide these options to calculate significance, so that makes it a little bit more accessible. But yeah, we have collected data, we have taken a look at what the effects are, but we want to visualize those effects maybe, so that everybody can take a look at it and form an opinion. Um, you could use Looker Studio for that. It's a free tool provided by Google. They have a paid version as well, but most people just use the free version because you know, it's very accessible. It could look like this. So you can see something about traffic distribution, your conversion rates, your average revenue per user, and have a total overview of what your experiment did. And you can check that per event as well. So it's basically a setup that makes a lot of those things visually appealing, make it more accessible for other stakeholders to take a look at it, not just the analyst or the experimenter, and just take the story into the company. So that's pretty a common way to handle this kind of situations. And then it's up to the analyst to interpret that data and uh, complete the story. Um, yeah, but when we do this for Google Analytics, we take that experiment, we take a look at the users, we take a look at how they are supposed to be divided among those variants. We expect a 50-50 split because we actually intended it for that to be done when we started the experiment. But when we plug in the numbers and we indicate that we expect it to be 50-50, we see that the expected amount is not um, reached. Some variants are over overcapacitated with users, and that suggests a problem because we don't know where those users came from, if they have been counted like twice or have been forgotten to be counted in another variant. So this basically makes a test less trustworthy because we don't know why that deviation is going wrong. Do we have a solution for that, Stefan?
I don't know. Why are we here today?
Yes, we have. Because we can just plug BigQuery before we started to visualize and analyze that data. Um, because BigQuery has some advantages over Google Analytics. We'll go into them a little bit more deeper as we progress. But for now, just know that these are the raw event level accounts of the data that we sent to BigQuery and to Google Analytics. And when we check the distribution of the traffic again, we can see that it's now a valid distribution. So we don't deviate as much from the expected amount of visitors as we did with the Google Analytics data, which is
Yeah.
awesome because it means that we can trust these distributions.
Yeah. So I think there are always differences. So comparing exact numbers is more or less impossible. But seeing differences like that feels very good, at least if you have some experience and if you have run 100 or thousands of experiments. I think it's trustful. But yeah, you're totally right. In the end, if you want to trust your data, you should use BigQuery instead.
That's the general takeaway. Yeah, we're going into the why a little bit further as we progress through the slides. But for now, let's talk about the differences. So yeah, what is BigQuery? BigQuery is generally a place where you collect all sources of data. So you can plug in anything that you like. There are spreadsheets that you can send to BigQuery. There are Google Analytics or other web analytics services that you can connect to BigQuery. And once all that data is in BigQuery, you can connect all those different sources together, and then you can prep them for Looker Studio, for example, or machine learning algorithms, or anything other than anything other like applications. Can't think of that many out of the top of my head, but I'm sure that you all have some idea of what to do with it. But why BigQuery instead of Google Analytics 4? I already said it before, but BigQuery gives you the raw event level data, whereas Google Analytics processes and aggregates that data. So that makes it a little bit more flexible for BigQuery to present you with a lot of different type of insights because it's unsampled and Google Analytics can apply sampling. It's not always the case. I mean, with smaller data sets, there doesn't need to be any sampling, but once you get into the high numbers, then sampling is almost always applied, which can be a problem. When we take a look at the data structures, data is organized in daily tables for BigQuery, which means that every day data is put in those tables and you can use it for your own volition. And data in Google Analytics is presented through reports that are customizable through the Explorer option. Um, but it's really easy to use also because of the graphical interface. And that's a big caveat for Google Analytics because it's really easy to read and find data. But you need some technical skills for BigQuery. Specifically, you need to be able to write SQL, which is a query language. Data is also being reported the following day into BigQuery, and it can take up to 72 hours to finalize, but you can still just export it like right away the following day because it runs overnight. And data in Google Analytics 4 takes a little bit more time to process. If you really are out of luck, then it can take up to 48 hours. I've not really seen many cases where it takes as long as that, but you can be out of luck. And if you're in need for insights, then, well, you might have to disappoint some people if you're on a
That's
tight
true.
deadline.
Yeah, usually I think it takes 10 to 15 hours. Sometimes you already
Yeah.
see first numbers after 2 to 3 hours, but yeah, it's not very reliable how long you need to wait.
Yeah, but also if you do analysis like the following day and you see, oh, great, there's data in my events,
Yeah,
you do the analysis and then you wait 2 days and you look back again, then, oh my God, the numbers are different. Why is that? Well, because of this.
absolutely.
So yeah, just to a quick summary for BigQuery and Google Analytics. BigQuery gives you the flexibility and depth that you need for the analysis stage. And although Google Analytics is a lot more accessible, um, it's a little bit limited with how deep you can delve and how flexible you are in connecting different sources of data. So that's basically why we favor BigQuery because of that flexibility and the depth that it provides us.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, because there's another unseen pitfall. We already talked about it in the beginning, the hyperlog log plus plus algorithm. This is used to estimate users. So we don't count them in Google Analytics. That's an estimation. That's done by this algorithm. BigQuery doesn't use this estimation. And why is this a problem in analytics? Because if you do some aggregated analysis over your reports like devices or campaigns, marketing campaigns, or just general user event data, it might not be so much of a problem, right? Because you take a look at averages, average conversion rate, average revenue per transaction. Those are numbers that are pretty accurate in their own way, but it starts to be a problem when you start comparing samples, because what you're actually doing is comparing a sample that's built on estimated data, and you can see why that might throw some numbers off when you take a look at the unsampled raw event level data afterwards. So that's basically why we are very careful when we're looking at GA4. But for normal aggregate analysis, it's totally fine. Seeing
Yeah,
trends and patterns, that's no problem at all.
I think so too. So I think the first time I heard about it, I was quite shocked because it really sounds horrible. So does this mean I cannot even trust GA4 data at all? And is this just like a roulette or rolling the dice and whatever? But I think it sounds worse than it is. In the end, you will have comparable numbers between GA4 and BigQuery. Somehow they will differ, especially in the user count. But usually when you see a winner in GA4, very often it's a winner in BigQuery as well. So the tendency, at least, it's the same. Already in
Yeah.
the beginning, I think I said at the moment when you have results in your A/B testing tool, which maybe is a winner, and in GA4 it's a loser, then you totally lose trust. I have
Yeah.
never seen this in BigQuery and GA4. So when BigQuery says it's a winner, GA4 has the same tendency and the way around. But you need to be sure at least that there are differences, and there will be differences for sure.
I think it got better though, because when GA4 just launched, there were some cases where we saw winners in analytics versus no winners in BigQuery. But it got better for sure.
Maybe it improved. Yeah, maybe it's a good
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
I hope so. But yeah, like I said before, we generally favor BigQuery. We're going to go into why BigQuery is the better choice in most cases when we talk about experimentation. Uh, for that, I created an example for you guys. So we did an A/B test where we designed the buy box part of a product page on an e-commerce shop, e-commerce site, sorry. This was our control group. This was our variant. So we basically smoothed the experience a little bit, uh, added a little bit more contrast, restructured information so that it fit more with the expectation of the visitor, and then we analyzed the results. First, we took a look at GA4 data. So that's some pretty numbers, like really high in count, which is awesome because, we can detect small effects if they actually exist. And we did. Google Analytics told us that this was a significant winner with a chance to win of no more than less 97.5% chance to win. So that is pretty awesome. I mean, I'd shout this from the rooftops if I were a stakeholder in this project, which I actually was, by the way. But sure, but sure. So yeah, happy, happy, joy, joy, right? But since these numbers are pretty high, and we knew about the cardinality estimation in Google Analytics, the estimated user count, we also took a look at the BigQuery event data. Different numbers, but not too different, right? But not significant. Still a relatively high chance to win. So what you just said, Stefan, holds up. We did see like the tendency of a positive effect, but if you're really dead set on finding significant results and mitigate that risk level as much as possible, then you would not be very satisfied with these results, right? So yeah, 92.5% is still pretty awesome. But if you really want to take as little risk as possible, this might not cut the check. So yeah, small differences can lead to a big impact. Relatively, we didn't really see that much of a change. Some changes in visitors and conversions, but we overestimated the effect size that we measured, and that poses a real problem because if you're dead set on finding significant changes, that might actually cost you real life money. That might cost the business money. So that's a big issue. So yeah, the added value of BigQuery is precision and flexibility. But how do we connect the two of them? Experiments that we did in, for example, Verify with BigQuery. Just a reminder, we do connect analytics to BigQuery because it's the reporting that's flawed and not the collection mechanism. But you need someone who's knowledgeable in that sense to implement it correctly. So
Yeah.
that's a big if, obviously. But to connect to BigQuery, you first need a BigQuery account. So you navigate to the cloud platform of Google, and then you click on BigQuery. It's the little. Can I do this? No, I can't. So you connect to this BigQuery Studio. You create a project, and then you navigate back to GA4. And in GA4, you go to your admin settings, you click on BigQuery links, you select the appropriate property, and you connect your data stream to it.
And
And
this
then
is
you're all set.
all, and this is all you need to do, Buzz, in order to use
Yep.
BigQuery already.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yes,
So
seems easy, right?
yeah, it does seem easy, but then you have the connection, but you need to do something with that connection, right? So you're not done yet because, well, you connected the two. So you connected everything that goes into Google Analytics with BigQuery. But how do you extract that experiment information? Well, we have a step-by-step guide here for you. First, it's really important to know when your experiment ran because BigQuery doesn't really provide a graphical interface, so you need to explicitly state the date range. You also need to know what your variant IDs were. So you need to find that somewhere in your experimentation tool or your analytics tool if you use it to recognize those variants. Then you need to know where to get that data from because BigQuery has tables, a table structure. If you take the wrong table, then you get zero results, which is too bad. Then you need to select the metrics to compare. That can be as big as a transaction, but you can also use add to carts or certain page views that are really important, some forms that were filled out. You name it. You can connect everything. Then you need to set up your query so that it's adaptable, modifiable, and able to be read by everyone who needs to read it and work with it. So we use common table expressions for that for a large amount of uh, different events so that it's really easy to read and maintain. Then we need to combine those experiment variants with those filter metrics, and then we put that in a table, and then we can view the table. And then we have all the information that we need to use in a significance calculator.
So a lot of theory right now, yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you can I mean I already said you can use a significance calculator, but you can do calculations in BigQuery itself if you know how to write them. So it's not a prerequisite to actually use external calculators or paid calculators, but you can also do it in BigQuery itself. But again, you need to know how to do it. Um, yeah, we provided you with some queries that can help you with analyzing your data. This is for transactional experiment data, so transaction yes or no, which you can adapt to your own use, uh, just to get some head start on how to analyze and extract experiment data.
Yeah, so feel free to scan this QR code and grab those data. But if you do not want to do it right away, we will share this whole presentation with you guys afterwards as well. So no need to do it right away.
No pressure. Yeah, and this is the way that it looks. So you have the table on the bottom side of the screen with your variants A and B and all the data that you can muster. This is very much expandable. So like I said, we structure the query so that it can be adjusted and improved upon.
So
This
just
is
to give a little bit more insight, so on the left-hand side in your BigQuery project, you selected the Job Explorer. Here you can run those queries, and in the bottom of the screen, you can see basically the output of your query, in which you compare two variation with each other, and you see the different metrics you requested and wanted to compare with each other, right?
yeah, correct.
Perfect. And if somebody wants to extend those queries, for example, with, as you mentioned, a significance analysis, this also would be possible. And then already inside here, you could see the specific significance calculation numbers. Awesome.
Awesome. This is the second one. If you want to do an analysis on revenue per transaction. I mean, you have aggregated numbers in Google Analytics, which is fine to get a general overview, but you can't see any outliers in those aggregated numbers. So you don't really know what was the better performing variant. So you need to do different kind of analysis for that. And we provided you with a script that extracts those rows of data that you need for that kind of analysis. Again, you can scan the code for the gist, but if you don't want to do it right now, you'll receive the presentation afterwards. And then you see the Job Explorer view again, and this is the output table. So you see every transaction is a different row, and then you can see in what variant the transaction was placed, and you can conduct an analysis on that.
And the cool thing is, for example, if you have a view like that, you can just use your own outlier methods, for example, like cropping, I don't know, the standard deviation 3 times, or you can work with some percentiles you want to crop or somehow align. And in this way, you're totally open to work with the data in the way you like.
Yeah, so it really depends on what kind of data that you have for the method to handle outliers. Yeah, but you can use it for whatever you fit your needs best. We're going through this on a racetrack, I think. We're moving really fast. But yeah, some general
There is
tips
one
for.
question. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The participant that wants that you can go back to the last page to see the query again. So I think the page before, yeah.
This one.
So this is the revenue query exactly. But
Yeah.
as I already mentioned, we will share the presentations with you guys afterwards. So you have more than enough time to double check them. Okay, we can proceed. I got to go.
All right. So yeah, some general tips for using BigQuery because it's a really steep learning curve if you just get started with it. If you're already a little bit familiar with the Google Cloud Platform and BigQuery, you might see some tips that you already know about. But if you're just getting started, it really helps to get a little bit of pointers in the right direction. So yeah, the first thing that you might want to do is familiarize yourself with the export schema and the experiment setup. So for example, some events that are really handy to have are the event dates, the timestamps of those event dates, the names of certain events. So for example, like purchase or a goal name, the user pseudo ID, which is really important because that is the ID that connects, for example, verify with analytics data. And then the event parameters that are structured into a nested field. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it's really important to know that it's there. And then if you're so inclined to do some session level analysis, you need the session ID. And then you need to identify the experiment parameters. So different tools use different kind of keys. Verify, for example, uses verify A/B test short, but those can differ among other vendors. So you need to make sure that you know what you're looking for in order to get the right results. You can use the schema viewer to get a more general overview of your data. So you can just click around and see how your data is structured in Google Analytics. Just click on the nested fields to get a better impression of where to look for certain events. So that might help you a lot. And then I already touched upon it like 2 slides back, but it's really important to know what unnesting means. So if you remember the Windows Explorer, right, you can click those different directories and you see that there are other directories and files under it. That is basically how some tables are structured in BigQuery. And unnesting them means like flattening that structure. So just take it out of that nest and just putting it all underneath each other. And you need to master that technique if you want to get access to some of the parameters that you need for your analysis. And in this example, I show you how to do it.
There's one other question. I think I can ask the question and answer it myself.
All right.
Do all events configured in GTM need to add the verify A/B test short parameter? Short answer, no, basically. So the sending this specific experiment data to GA4 just flags the user that he is in a specific experiment variation. You send this whenever the experiment is active, just in order to mark the user, right? So this is the same as with VWO, optimizely convert, or whatever. The only thing you need to do is to send this event once or multiple times. In the end, in your queries, you're just requesting the specific whatever users or conversions which were marked with this specific event, and you are doing your filtering options like that. So hopefully the answer is quite clear.
But then there's an issue that we haven't touched upon yet, Stefan, which is cost and performance.
Oh yeah.
That's really important, and I feel that we could actually devote an entire webinar on cost and performance optimization because BigQuery um, can result in expensive queries. I don't know if the screenshot is readable from the screens of the viewers, but it basically says that they ran a query, and within 10 seconds, they racked up a bill of $10,000 because they just used so much querying data that that added up really quickly. It needs to be said that you need a lot of data for that to be happening, but there is a risk of superseding the generous free limits of BigQuery.
Exactly. And yeah, to be honest, I also read this LinkedIn post and I was super shocked how is this possible. But if you run somehow queries and you end up in some infinite loops and you are syncing those data, for example, with the Looker Studio, which is just requesting every 15 minutes those data from BigQuery, then you can end up in a mess. So to be honest, you need to know what to do in order to use, for example, the Looker Studio or to run those samples. It's better to work maybe in a sandbox or just to start with easy queries. But yeah, if you build them on your own, please guys, be cautious.
Yeah, it's good to know that the sandbox is actually the starting point for using BigQuery if you haven't used it before, as long as you don't add any billing information, then you're in the sandbox. That also means that you're limited in the use of BigQuery, but it does provide a safe environment to play around a bit.
The cool thing is in the sandbox, you already can do whatever you like. You already can run your queries. The down, yeah, a disadvantage is that your tables are only valid for 60 days. And after a specific amount of queries you run in this barrier that you need to add credit card data. But for most of the clients, to be honest, you never have to add those specific credit card data, only if you really want to make really, yeah, advanced queries, what you usually don't need to do.
Exactly. So yeah, we got a lot of tips for you on how to optimize your queries. First, you want to limit the date range because the more dates that you incorporate in your query, the more data has to be crawled in order to get the results that you need. So if you limit that data, you need less computing resources. Um, Secondly, it's really important to only access the columns that you actually need for your analysis. Some tables might contain a lot more information, but if it's redundant, skip it because you won't need it and it will cost you. Filter as early as you can, as you possibly can. So, for example, filter only the event names that are relevant for your analysis, or use the table suffix filter that actually helps you define a date range. Safe divide prevents you from division by zero, which can be a costly mistake because this can result in zero results, and it'll still cost you the amount of data that it costs to run the query. So this is a costly mistake to avoid. And if there's a preview option, it's not always present, but if there is a preview option, you can run it to see what your data will look like, or just limit the amount of lines, the amount of rows that you get. The standard limit that Google provides in their own queries is 1,000. That might be adequate, that might not be. There's also a little indication of how many megabytes or gigabytes the query costs in the left bottom of your screen. So that might also help. Then a couple of recommendations. In short, compare your data sources, understand the differences. You need to have clean experiment tracking in BigQuery. You can use tested SQL templates or safe spaces like the ones we provided for you. Optimize your queries for performance and cost. And if you don't really have a really good idea of how to start or proceed from a certain point, don't be afraid to ask for help, because this is not really easy material, and it's better to start well than to fix things afterward.
So there was a question if Verify has a BigQuery integration. Yes, we have. You exactly can see it right now. And Buzz already mentioned that you should run your SQL queries maybe with predefined scripts, because you want to know if the script is doing exactly the job what it should do. But the safe space for me is also if you have an environment, for example, like we implemented, in which you just have maybe an auto setup in order to set up BigQuery. So all the project you have seen we have set up before is set up automatically. And then the queries are running in the background. For example, what you can see here on the right side, you can add a BigQuery goal, and you can add any event you like and just add it as a goal. And then the data is just grabbed and visualized in the Verify IO dashboard. So the idea is it's always your data, and we are just visualizing them. So that's what we usually understand with one source of truth, because it's your data. You can do whatever you like with those data, but we give you just a graphical interface in order to work with this data, even if you are maybe scared in working with SQL, or you just want to have a more intuitive way of seeing your reports. And on the next slide, for example, we prepared something for this webinar. Here you can see the goal transaction. The first one is grabbed with GA4 data, as we also have a GA4 integration. And the second one was grabbed from BigQuery. Here you can see that you have slight differences in the amount of visitors. Sometimes the difference is higher than you can see here. It always depends a little bit. And you also can see that the conversions is a little bit different, and the conversion rate is a little bit different, but the tendency at least is the same. So this amount of differences you can expect, but that's how easy you could work, for example, with BigQuery. You can run SQL queries. The big advantage is you can do whatever you like, or you can work within safe spaces and can use filters like filtering on segments, excluding, I don't know, duplicate user events, or maybe exclude empty purchase events and so on. But as you see, this is just, it's limited, right? But if you have more crazy use cases on your own, then feel free to write your own queries and do the cool stuff what Buzz is doing.
So yeah, the next steps, Stefan.
Yeah, so the next steps, maybe a few things which could be interesting for you guys. First of all, compare your data, compare your GA4 data with BigQuery data. and just start smoothly. I just can recommend get in touch with Bas if you want to start with this topic. I think he's happy to help you to get a quick start in this topic, and he can explain you a lot of stuff. And don't be scared; it's not that complicated if you just yeah mind a few things. Feel free to try out our BigQuery integration. Just drop me a message in LinkedIn or via email, whatever you like. Feel free to try it out. And the last thing is we created a big query community in Slack. I would be happy if you guys would join our big query community. It's for everybody. It's for specialists. It's for beginners, intermediates. It doesn't matter. Our goal is that we just spread the word about BigQuery. Everybody should be able to use it because it's your data. You can take trust in those data. And whenever you switch a testing tool, you still will have the same foundation of your data, right? So you ever can trust your data. And I think that's the message I wanted to share in the end. You should trust your own data and don't be scared. Bas, do
All
you
right.
have last things before people can ask their questions? So if you guys
Yeah.
have questions, just drop a message here and we are happy to answer them.
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing is don't be afraid to start. There's the sandbox that can help you just get a feel of things. The queries that we provided for you in the slide deck will also provide a head start just to get some basic transactional data and some revenue data for you guys to analyze. And if you need any help, don't be afraid to ask for it because I'm happy to help, and Stefan is also.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, guys, you're welcome. Thank you for the messages. We were happy to do this webinar. And guys, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to chat about BigQuery. Hopefully you recognize the spirit. We are talking about this topic. It's really our passion. And yeah, hopefully speak to you in a bit. So in this way, I think it's done for today. Have a great day. And Buzz, we speak in a bit. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.